power through integrity from the belly of the beast. Your host and conservative connection, Dr. Jim Robbins.
Hey, everybody. Well, if it's Wednesday morning, it must be the Conservative Connection. This is Jim Robbins, and welcome. Thanks for tuning in. Really appreciate it. As usual, there's a lot to talk about. That's, one thing I love about the current administration. In my job, I have to come up with something to write about every day, an editorial for the newspaper. And the hardest part of my job, in theory, is coming up with topics. But I'll tell you, the people in power right now are an endless supply of topics. If I don't have anything to write about, all I have to do is wait a few minutes, and then something will happen, and suddenly everything's fine. So the big talk of the week, of course, was the president's speech last Thursday, then his speech on Sunday, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's speech before AIPAC, and the whole Israel issue. And, they really put their foot in it with this. It's amazing to me to watch the on-the-job training that is going on in the White House and has been going on ever since Mr. Obama took office. One of the digs at him in the 2008 campaign was that he didn't have any foreign policy experience, that he wouldn't really know what he's doing. And we were assured that this wasn't the case. The world loved him. Everything would fall into place and so forth. And, well, we're just not seeing it. The speech last Thursday on Middle East policy, fascinating exercise. And the thing that people zoomed in on, apart from the other stuff, we support democracy, et cetera. Okay, that's all well and good. But the centerpiece of all that became the Israel portion. And the thing that I heard was that, on very good authority, the speech last Thursday was not finished, substantially unfinished, up to right before it was given. Like, most of the speech was being written the morning that it was given. And this is also why the president was late. He was a half hour late coming on, and because they were still working on it. And I'm fairly certain that the Israel portion of that speech was just something they threw in at the last minute. They grabbed some old talking points, they tossed it in, they hoped for the best. No consulting with our allies, particularly with Israel, no staffing through the interagency, which is a really boring sounding thing, but it's something you do in government where you talk to the experts before speaking. You would think that's what you'd want to do. And, that explains part of it, just not being ready. Another thing that I heard was that the reason for the timing of the speech, the reason it was kind of rushed out there, was that Prime Minister Netanyahu had already been invited to give an address to Congress. And the White House was afraid that he would set the agenda. If they didn't get something out first, that he would be the one who would wind up setting the baseline for negotiations, the baseline for the policy. So that was part two. Part three, the general collapse of the administration's peace efforts. We had the resignation of George Mitchell, the lead negotiator, allegedly. It's hard to have a negotiator when there are no negotiations, but he was the guy honchoing the effort. So his resignation took effect last Friday. It was actually submitted weeks ago, but they didn't announce it until a week before it was to take effect, and then, of course, it took effect. So that was part of it, too. And so all of these things come together, and we have the firestorm of the last week, because the president mentions the 1967 borders of Israel as the baseline for negotiations. And, well, let me just say parenthetically, the 67 border is really the 1949 border, the ceasefire border of where the Israelis newly independent, stopped the Arab armies that were coming to destroy them. So, that's the patrimony of this sacred green line. Just the place where they stopped the armies that were coming to kill them. So it's not really some kind of, ideally laid out border for some kind of future state. That's just where they happen to be. In any case, so the president mentions these lines. And, in Israel, you get a very visceral and emotional reaction to this. Israel's longtime ambassador to the United States and to the UN, Avi Eban, referred to them as the Auschwitz lines, because they were indefensible and they basically implied the destruction of Israel. The president did not have to mention those lines. He just didn't. Everybody knows that the ultimate peace deal is going to be approximately along there, but the president chose to make it explicit. And he later claimed that this was intentional, that everybody knows this and so forth, but there's some things we just don't want to mention. A friend of yours has put on a lot of weight or something. Everybody knows it. Maybe you don't want to be the person to mention it. Maybe they'll figure it out for themselves. It's diplomacy. That's the art of diplomacy. It's tact. And again, gets back to our on-the-job training aspect. So I don't want to rehash all of the stuff that happened, go into it. That's been on the news. I will point out something, and I had an editorial in the Times a couple of days ago on this, that really when you talk about 67, that line went straight through Jerusalem. And Jerusalem is really the focal point of this whole debate. Israel claims it as their capital, as a united city. It was united by force in 1967 when the Israelis took over the eastern part of Jerusalem, which previously had been controlled by Jordan. It's never been controlled by Palestinians, by the way. And Israel has claimed it as their united capital ever since. And this was a point that Prime Minister Netanyahu made in his most recent speech, and that it will forever be united. Incidentally, Barack Obama in 2008, when he was running for president and speaking to AIPAC, made the same point in almost exactly the same words. He said that Jerusalem will remain the united capital of Israel. But ever since then, he's backed off of that because the Palestinians want half of Jerusalem for their capital. The Israelis say, never going to happen. I think that's what Bibi Netanyahu said, quote unquote, never going to happen. Nevertheless, the president's sticking to this policy. And unlike 2008, where he said it'll be the united capital forever, now he won't even talk about Jerusalem. And in fact, in his speech before AIPAC, he did not say the word Jerusalem. And he won't, because he wants to divide it. He won't say it, but that's a fact. And the Israelis are saying, forget about it. That's not going to happen. So right there we have the rock upon which this whole thing is foundering. The president can't find a way around it. He wants to appease the Palestinians. He thinks this is going to help. But it won't help, because the Palestinians aren't going to get a piece of Jerusalem. And they just need to accept that fact. So long as the administration holds out hope to them that they will get part of Jerusalem for their capital, they will never give in. But Israel won't give in either. And Israel holds the ground. So, in this case, possession is going to be the law. And this could all be solved very quickly if President Obama would simply say, Jerusalem is settled, and that's it. Then you can get into the agreed swaps and 67 lines and all this other stuff. Just settle that one issue. Instead, he's saying, well, we'll talk about it later. Well, good, because, later may not come for President Obama, after his single term is up, I hope. Then someone else can deal with it. And he can, look at his Nobel Peace Prize on the shelf and wonder what all that was about. In any case, I think that the larger issue, though, is about Obama's foreign policy. And I don't want to make today all about foreign policy because, actually that's my beat. I could talk about it forever. But I'll talk about other things, but just indulge me for a minute. I think the administration thinks that going into the 2012 race, that foreign policy is a strong hand for them. You know, they killed bin Laden. Okay, good. Sure, the infrastructure for that was laid out by George Bush, and basically they were waiting for that phone call of the terrorist who called his friend, the courier, and then they tracked down bin Laden, and then SEALs took care of it, using an infrastructure in Special Operations Forces that was also put in place by President Bush. But nevertheless, President Obama can take credit for that. He can say, okay, I got bin Laden. But in every other respect, his foreign policy has been pretty much a failure. If you just go down the list, what really are his accomplishments? I mean, check the promises versus the reality. Now, some of the things that he's failed on are actually really good. For example, he was going to give us a global climate deal at some point. If you go back to 2009 and 2010, when they had these large international gatherings to solve the climate issue, and global warming. And President Obama was basically shunned by the leaders of China and India and Brazil and South Africa and other countries that, would rather have economic growth than worry about Arctic ice. And they basically, shut down those proceedings, and his leadership was useless. And you know what? And we win, because that climate deal would have been a disaster for our country. And it's a good thing that he failed. His outreach to the Muslim world is another aspect of this. He came in, he was supposed to be the bridge builder. He was going to repair all the damage that George W. Bush allegedly did in that part of the world. He gave a great speech in Cairo in the summer of 2009, and everything was supposed to be great. But if you look at the latest polling from the Pew Center, they do a global public affairs poll. If you look at the attitudes of people in that part of the world, countries with a Muslim majority, the opinion of the United States is as low as it was at the end of the Bush years, if not lower. It's actually declined over the last 2 years since President Obama gave his Cairo speech. And even the bump that he got in 2009 didn't raise opinion in that part of the world as high as it was at the height of the Bush administration in 2005, 2006. The United States was actually better regarded in that part of the world in general than it was at any time during the Obama administration. So that whole outreach effort, the whole, bowing to the Saudi king or whatever, the fawning, obsequious outreach to what the administration calls, one of the world's great religions and so forth, that whole thing has completely failed. Where's the success? I mean, even the things that he wants to do, that he thinks he really can do, aren't working. He promised a grand bargain in South Asia to settle all of the issues between India, Pakistan, and Afghanistan. Well, that's obviously failed. There was supposed to be a grand bargain in the Middle East. It was going to solve the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, plus Iran, throw Iran into the mix. So that whole framework's gone. I mean, that was a non-starter from the beginning. The Arab Spring is moving on without the benefit of Mr. Obama's leadership. He even admitted in his speech last week that he never saw it coming. And he said no one could see it coming. Well, I think the people in it could see it coming. Some people could see it coming, but he couldn't see it coming. Okay, the guy who's the head of the greatest intelligence apparatus in the world, but he couldn't see it coming. Okay, that's fine. The point is, his whole policy with respect to that has been reactive and hasn't amounted to much in terms of protecting U.S. interests. His policies with regard to China haven't been very productive for our country. China's just accumulating a lot more U.S. debt, and recently, Chinese generals were given a tour of our, I think I mentioned this last week, our secret cyber war facilities, things like this, these exchanges we're doing with China that have great benefit to them, but really no benefit to us. China is rapidly developing their space program, and they want to put a man on the moon, while the United States is dismantling its space program. And if we want to put humans in space, we have to hitch a ride with Russia now, because our shuttle fleet is being decommissioned, and we have nothing to succeed it. In Latin America, the president hasn't achieved anything worth noting. Meanwhile, Hugo Chavez in Venezuela is building an anti-American alliance throughout the region. He's using profits from oil money to pursue a lot of anti-American initiatives, and is even talking about working with the Iranians on building a nuclear capability in his country. So, I mean, it's almost like, forget Iran. The Iran issue is so far advanced now that they're helping others achieve a nuclear capability. So, add it up. The nuclear proliferation challenge in general hasn't shown a lot of success, whether it's North Korea or Pakistan or Iran, now Venezuela. The junta in Burma, Burma? Are you kidding me? Okay, the junta in Burma wants a nuclear weapon and is talking about getting a nuclear capability. Let me tell you, if Burma can have a nuclear weapon, anybody can have a nuclear weapon. Now, sure, it's only talk right now. But nevertheless, shouldn't we be, on top of this? So that what we're doing, the United States, under the global zero policy of the president, aptly named, I must say, is just to disarm ourselves. That the United States is building down its nuclear stockpile as an example to the world, and in hopes and in the belief that the rest of the world, through some kind of, goodwill, some kind of spirit of generosity, is going to get rid of nuclear weapons as well. The other countries will say, the United States is getting rid of this, potent tool of warfare, so we better too. And then everyone can join hands and sing Kumbaya. Well, it's not evident that any other country is going to follow this lead towards nuclear disarmament. In fact, it's going the other way. More countries are either starting nuclear programs or looking at nuclear programs, thinking about them or something. All through the Middle East, there are countries like Saudi Arabia that are making contingency plans for what happens when Iran detonates its nuclear weapon. And it does not involve getting rid of their own nuclear capability. It involves building it up. Because in the rational world of international relations, you want to have that ace in the hole. Why is Iran building a nuclear weapon? Because they want that insurance card against us. And if we disarm, the Iranians will just say, great. They'll have nuclear weapons and we won't. That's in the Iranian world, that's the ideal situation. Mm-hmm. So we are taking steps to fulfill the ideal requirements of what Iran would love to do. We're not doing a great job on missile defense, and our economic policies aren't, I don't know what they're doing. But I do know that last fall when President Obama visited India, he publicly affirmed that the United States was a declining economic force, that we were no longer the unquestioned economic leader of the world. And he said this was a good thing because, in his view, it would force Americans to become more competitive or think about it more or something like that. So U.S. economic decline, U.S. decline of world leadership to the president is a good thing. Well, permit me to disagree, but I tend to think not. When you look at a conservative foreign policy, because they could say, well, okay, smart guy, you're saying the administration's all host stuff, but what do you have? As far as I'm concerned, basically there are only three broad principles that would underlie a conservative foreign policy. One is peace through strength, and I don't know how good a job we're doing at that. We had Defense Secretary Gates talking about the negative effects of budget cuts, potentially a return to the hollow forces of the 1970s, various problems that could arise there, but not just military power, but just a general sense of American power and influence. And, the current administration doesn't really have that as their framework, but any conservative foreign policy should start with that as one of the bases. Peace through strength. It goes back to Ronald Reagan. It goes back even before Ronald Reagan, and it sounds like second plank, supporting American interests abroad. And what I mean by that, I would stress not the word interest, but I would stress the word American, because the approach of the current administration seems to be to always try to build international consensus, and not just build consensus, but seek international permission to take action in America's interests abroad. The current, I don't know if you want to call it a war, current stuff going on in Libya, the president doesn't call it a war. He's, War Powers Act doesn't apply to him, he says. I wonder if the troops involved are getting combat pay. I think they probably are, in any case. They're getting combat pay, it's a war. But the current fracas in Libya, for example, didn't get going until the Arab League met. And the Arab League said something has to be done about Libya. And President Obama said, when the Arab League said it was okay, then we took action. Well, so far as I'm concerned, I don't think we need the Arab League's permission to do anything. I mean, no offense to them, but if it's in U.S. interest to intervene in a country militarily, I'm not saying we should do that all the time, but if it's in U.S. interest, then the United States, as a sovereign country, has the ability and the responsibility to do that, with or without the permission of the United Nations or the Arab League or anyone else. The focus of the current administration is not on protecting American interests, except insofar as they can be reconciled with the interests of the international community, the UN, or other such organizations. And that's a problem, because it means that we will miss opportunities to take action where we should, and we will be sucked into things that are not necessarily things the U.S. should be involved in. So supporting American interests, second plank. And the third plank is defending freedom. Now, that may seem like an obvious one, but I don't know that it is. You hear a lot of talk about democracy. And democracy is all well and good. But democracy and freedom are two different things. Actually, some years ago when I was working for the government, I had an Iraqi officer who was explaining this to me, a guy from Iraq, who said that the U.S. makes a big mistake going around the world saying we want to see democracy, because democracy can lead to a lot of different ends. Democracy is just a mechanism for determining what kind of government you're going to have. And obviously there's nothing wrong with that. We have a democracy, free countries have democracies. That's good. But number one, just because you have voting doesn't mean you have a democracy. Number two, democracies traditionally, and this is going back to the ancient Greeks, have been seen as very unstable, and in some circumstances can very easily lead to outcomes that are against freedom. They can lead to dictatorships. They can lead to mob rule, all kinds of negative things. So, promoting democracy in Egypt, for example, that's all well and good, but it could very easily lead to a government in Egypt that, number one, is not our friend, and number two, decides to impose a radical Islamist form of government on Egypt that itself will extinguish democracy. And so we'll be left with one of the largest, most powerful countries in the Middle East being under the sway of Islamism and not being a friend of the United States, certainly not being a friend of Israel, and certainly not being in favor of the values that we would like to see in the rest of the world. So just going around saying, let's promote democracy is not good enough. What we really want to promote is freedom. The whole bundle of rights and liberties on which this country is based. If you have a free country, you'll wind up with a democracy. But if you have a democracy, you will not necessarily wind up with freedom. So if we're out there promoting equality, free trade, freedom of religion, the rights of women, all of these things, all the, freedom of speech and expression, all of the things that are protected by our Constitution, if we're out there promoting those things, we'll have a much better outcome. Again, the current administration doesn't see it that way. They say that some of these things might come across as offensive to the rest of the world. I say, so what? But, let them be offended. We're the shining city on the hill, so let them deal with it. But, they don't like us now. So we might as well stand up for what we believe in. And if they don't like it, then tough luck. In any case, so those 3 planks: peace through strength, supporting American interests, and defending freedom. And, any Republican, any conservative candidate in 2012 who stands on those 3 planks, I think will do a very good job. And the Obama's administration record, it just really can't stand up to that critique. Because when you look at what they've done in foreign policy, it's left America weaker. It has not defended American interests, and it certainly hasn't promoted freedom. Okay, so end of sermon on that, but just thought that it would be...
It was a good sermon.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, good to talk about foreign policy a little bit. Well, speaking of which, here's something. It's a rumor I picked up. Actually, it's something more than a rumor because it came from a pretty good source. First, we had, I'm talking about naming ships, naming U.S. war vessels. First, we had the John Murtha, a political payoff to a congressman who passed away, who had done a lot of work for the administration in terms of being, the arm of Congress at the Pentagon, going over there, forcing the Pentagon to the will of Nancy Pelosi and the Democratic Congress and the president. So he was rewarded when he passed away with a ship, the John Murtha. Next, we had, most recently, the Cesar Chavez. He's got 2 great things in his favor from an administration point of view: a labor organizer and Latino. So, he can curry favor with those political groups by naming a U.S. war vessel after him. So here's number 3, if you're ready for this. The latest rumors that the next aircraft carrier, our biggest, most important capital ship, the next U.S. aircraft carrier is going to be named after Ted Kennedy, Senator Ted Kennedy. I don't know how you feel about that, but I think that is just, atrocious. And the first question you have to ask is, will it float? Will it float? Mary Jo, contact me. Where are you now? But anyway, the USS Ted Kennedy. I'm still trying to get a harder confirmation on this, so it's still kind of semi-rumor, but apparently it's out there in the discussion that this would be the case. And carriers are usually named after presidents. So Eisenhower, we have the John F. Kennedy, the Ronald Reagan, usually reserved for presidents. And, the last I saw, we don't have so many carriers that we ran out of presidents. And we really should stick to that precedent and, keep it where it belongs and not engage in this political pandering Politicizing the naming of ships. It just shows the length of, the depth of the Chicago politics or whatever you want to call it. Just, the Belinsky tactics. I don't know. Just the politicization of everything. The Obama team just can't help themselves. They just, everything is politics to them. Now, why not just name a ship after a president? Whether it's Republican or Democrat, shift back and forth. The last one was Reagan. Okay, fine. Have a Franklin Roosevelt. I don't know. The Woodrow Wilson, the Thomas Jefferson, heck, whatever. Just, name it after a president as has been traditional and leave politics out of it. And they'll make the case, Ted Kennedy was, he was a great man. He was bipartisan or something. Oh, this is really in the interest of all Americans or some jazz like that. No, it isn't. He wasn't bipartisan. He was ultra-liberal. And he's not a president. So just stick to the model. And just leave Ted out of it. I'm just flabbergasted. But anyway. Incidentally, just want to mention that starting Friday, the Washington Times is going to be putting out a little, like, one-pager electronically, a little short document that they're calling the Robbins Report, in which they're going to give me, 1,000 words to basically expostulate on all kinds of stuff. So, things like this, I'll just toss it in. Things that maybe not deserve a full-length editorial or like a full-length article, but just little nuggets. Maybe some little longer things, but in any case. So just a great opportunity to use some of the other things that might go overlooked. And that'll be, I think that's starting on Friday. Well, I better find out because I have to write it. So I better find out what my deadline is. But in any case, if you want to get that or anything else that I've written, just drop me a line, jrobbins@washingtontimes.com, or you can contact me on Facebook. You can also visit America's Conservative Voice, Facebook fan page. You can like that one if you want. We post a lot of stuff there, or at a variety of other spots on the web. So anything you want.
Okay, now let me ask you. The Robbins Report is going to be something totally separate, like a newsletter type of thing that we can get? Yes, Dee. It will be it's a whole new thing. Probably what I'll do is some of it will be things that I didn't write on previously. Some of it will be references to other things that we've written in the paper. It'll be a variety of things, but just basically, it's like a one-page newsletter that'll go out every week with whatever's on my mind. And the paper's doing it, I guess, because they like what I think. I don't know. They like me there. It's great. Well, and I don't know. You seem to be a pretty busy man, which means that they can utilize that. So can you sign up for it? You said we can email you at where? Say that again. Deb is in chat, by the way. Said, hey, Jim, we should, by the way, she said, perhaps consider the SS Jim Robbins.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I don't think so. Yeah, a lot of problems with that. But, okay. Way too big an honor for me. Name it out, they should name, if they want to name ships after folks who aren't presidents, there are a lot of Medal of Honor recipients and other American heroes out there that they should be naming ships after and not showboaters like Ted Kennedy. John Kerry, is he going to get one? Who knows? Well, anyway, J Robbins, JROBBINS @WashingtonTimes.com. You can just send me, you don't have to say anything, just subscribe or whatever. Send me your email address. I'll put you on a list to get this thing. The paper has some kind of mega list with thousands of people on it. I don't even know who's on that list, but this thing is just going to get spammed out there. So if you want to get it, doesn't cost anything. probably, if you tune into here, I think you're going to get a preview of some of the things that will be in there anyway. So that's coming out. Okay, B, are we taking a break now?
Well, I was actually thinking that this was kind of a break. I wanted to say, too, that if you have any thoughts that you'd like to share on the show, if you've got an opinion you'd like to get out there or something you'd like to discuss with Jim, you can give us a call at 646-478-3519. That line is always open. Also urge you to make your way into chat if you haven't already done that. And it's been very busy. And go ahead and let your opinion be known there. If you are a little bit shy and don't want to talk on the phone or don't want to be on air, then certainly we can relay your messages from chat to Jim live right here on Conservative Connection. I've got All Fired Up engraved in my brain, so I'm going to have to take some time to get used to that. But
fantastic.
Yeah, but I think that's very exciting news, and congratulations on your Robbins report.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, it's just I'm one of the pilot people doing this. The paper's going to expand it to some other members of the staff, other folks with really great ideas. So, look out for those things. And the Washington Times is growing, expanding. And with 2012 coming up, there is no more important time for a conservative newspaper to be active because, we're certainly outnumbered in the media. I hate to say, mainstream media doesn't include us. That's a fact. So if you want to get all this good information, things to help you fight the good fight in the upcoming election, the Washington Times is a great place to get it. Well, I wanted to move. Are we taking a break, or are we?
We can take a quick break. Give you a minute to gulp.
Okay, let's.
Okay. Be right back, folks. Y'all don't go away. We'll see you back here in just a couple.
When people think of a combat zone, they think of death and destruction of human life and property. Instead, they should think of the word compassion, for it is everywhere, especially in the hearts and minds of the American warriors.
Soul of American Warriors really tells what is going on in the war in Iraq. And it's not what you've been led to believe.
I was amazed at how many times the word compassion came to my mind.
Betty Kilbride, an American writer embedded with the Marines in Iraq, touches the heart of patriotic America with her story, and the story of the valiant warriors bringing stability to a dictator-torn nation. Soul of American Warriors, available at fatherspress.com. That's www.fatherspress.com. Soul of American Warriors, fatherspress.com.
Soul of American Warriors, by the way, was written by Betty Kilbride, who you heard on that commercial. And Betty Kilbride does host our Monday night, Military Monday. If you haven't heard her, I urge you to be here at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time and join her for Military Monday. She will bring to the front lines of American minds what our military actually is out there doing for us every single week. If you don't have military family and you'd like to find out why you should be engaged in this part of your country, I urge you to tune in to Military Monday. Oh, what is that? Jim, don't move. 6 p.m. Monday nights right here on Blog Talk Radio at All Fired Up. And here we are back to Conservative Connection with host Jim Robbins.
Yeah, let me just say that Betty is a great person, a great patriot, and a fantastic supporter of the troops. So, if you have a chance to tune into her show, then you'll really enjoy it. I want to talk about a couple more things in our time remaining, but here's one for you. I don't know how many of you were looking forward to the rapture, which was supposed to come a few days ago. I hear now that it already came or something. I'm not exactly sure what the line is now, whether it arrived or not. I don't know. Maybe if anyone in the audience feels any different, I'm not sure. But
I think think it's possible that we missed the rapture, and they're moving the date back to October, I believe they said. So the rapture is going to happen in October instead of, because he apparently miscalculated, and I think he's probably just miscalculated because he didn't go. But
well, yeah, I heard that technically
we're what's left.
Yeah, it's supposed to be a two-phase process where there's the taking up, and then there's 6 months later there's the end of time. So maybe there was already the taking up and the end of time is coming in October or whatever. But just in case you want to know, there's another prediction. This one is coming from Iran, in which the president, Mahmoud Ahmadinejad, is being accused by some clerics of believing that the Messiah will stop by on June 5th. So if you want to mark your calendars, if the last one didn't work for you, then there's the June 5th opportunity. Now, this gets into some elements of Shia beliefs about there's something called a hidden imam who's supposed to come back, and the return will actually be a secret until the hidden imam checks everything out, and then all will be revealed later. I think it's 3 years later, something like that. So you won't know anything that's going on June 5th. It's going to be a covert return. And then we'll have to wait a few years to find out whether that actually happened. But of course, in October, everything's going to end anyway. So, plus there's the whole 2012 Mayan calendar business. There's too many ends of the world going on. It makes it hard to plan. I'm supposed to do long-term planning. Seriously. You can take out a mortgage? Okay, whatever. You'll never have to pay it. Because one way or another, the world's going to end.
I can tell you that I'm going to be here for a long time. So if you like what's going on right here at All Fired Up Radio, and it's actually about to grow. So if you like what's happening here and if you're getting ready for the rapture on, the 5th, then, hey, give me a call. I'll be happy to take some of your property off of your hands.
Yeah, well, this June 5th thing, like I said, it's the secret return. The actual end isn't going to come for a while, and it only works if you're in Iran or something. But anyway, for those multitudes in the audience who are believers in Shiism, here it comes. So, in any case, just thought you'd be interested. The Supreme Court on Monday handed down a ruling that was really interesting that deals with California's prison system. The case of Brown v. Plata, in which the court ruled that overcrowding in California prisons constituted a violation of the Eighth Amendment's ban on cruel and unusual punishment. It was a 5-4 decision, very contentious, apparently. That was the report. The liberals on the court were the ones who voted in the majority. Conservatives such as Samuel Alito voted against it, saying that it was going to create a public safety issue in California. Basically, California is being ordered to release up to 46,000 prisoners currently behind bars out of their around 140,000 inmates. So a pretty substantial group of folks. And 19,000 of these prisoners are illegal aliens. So the federal government could help out a lot by just helping California to deport these folks. The illegal aliens, this is a very contentious issue with the Obama administration. They have taken steps against states that have sought to stem the tide of illegals in various respects. We had that whole issue in Arizona over their law, which only mimicked the federal law, for example. But, none of the issues
that were raised in those particular cases apply here, because those cases had dealt with identifying who illegal aliens were. Liberals were saying that they wanted to just like have dragnets out or something. It wasn't even the case. But here we're talking about people who not only have already been identified as undocumented, but have committed crimes and other crimes and been convicted of them and are currently in jail. So there's really no rationale standing in the way of deporting these folks. It would help solve the overcrowding problem, which is what the Supreme Court ordered. It would also save a lot of money because these inmates in California cost almost $1 billion a year to incarcerate. And, California isn't exactly the golden state these days. They've fallen on hard times. So $1 billion, sure, it doesn't sound like much in Washington, but it's actually a lot of money. So deporting them seems like a no-brainer. Back in 2009, Governor Schwarzenegger at the time suggested that the state do this. Deport some of these people to save money and make it easier. But the federal government kind of balked at that. That they thought we're already processing too many cases. That they didn't want to get involved in the politics. But since then, the Obama administration has been claiming that they're deporting people in record numbers. The Obama team is actually trying to take over this issue. But they want it to be a win in their cause, the whole illegal immigration issue. And the Immigration and Customs Enforcement has a program called Criminal Alien Program, CAP, which takes care of this. They find deportables that are in prison and deport them. Last year, they claim that they have deported 195,000 illegals who are also convicts. Out of, according to an Inspector General report, each year there are about 300 to 450,000 of these people who could potentially be deported. So, the 19,000 coming out of California, it seems like a pretty easy can-do under these circumstances. And I really don't see an argument against it. It could help California comply with the federal court order. It reduces the number of undocumented migrants in the country, because otherwise they're back on the streets. It's not a question of keeping them in jail. Somebody has to be let go. So why not just use the deportable? And not only that, once you get this going, why wait for prison overcrowding to make this happen? If they're only getting around half of the deportables, well, why not invest the money to deport the rest of them? Otherwise, they're already prisoners. It's not just like going out and rounding up people and shoving them over the border. That's a whole separate debate. I'm not taking a stand on that. We'll say that for a future time. But in this particular case, you're talking about people who have already committed crimes and who have no right to be in the country. Mm-hmm. So there is really no rationale to keep them. They could say, well, what about someone who committed a multiple homicide? Well, maybe that's the kind of person you want to hang on to, because if you free them, even if it's somewhere else, well, that's almost a reward. If they go to America, commit mass murder, and they'll let you go. No, obviously not. Those are the kind of people we want to hang on to. They have to be punished. But for those who have committed other types of crimes, lesser types of crimes, who are basically just riding it out in our prison system and costing a lot of money before being released into the country, just get rid of them.
Right, yeah.
What do you think, Lee?
I have a caller, Gerald Harrison, who writes a blog called, hi, Gerald.
How you doing? My blog's called,
very well.
Yeah, my blog is called Watchman'sCorner.com.
I didn't want to get it wrong, but I knew it was Watchman. But I'm getting there.
That's not a problem, Beatrice. It's very, very interesting to go ahead and talk to you, Jim. I think you're definitely onto something. I mean, I kind of look at the being in California. We're dealing with the prison population situation, and yeah, I mean, I think it'd be pretty easy for us to go out here and be able to get ICE and Border Patrol and everybody else and kind of round them up. It'd be almost like shooting fish in a barrel.
Well, so to speak.
I mean, they're there. They already have a uniform. They're already in the penal system. Bring a van, shackle them up, take them to the border. How simple is that?
Well, yeah, exactly. I think that the important thing to note about this is that the mechanism is already there. In other words, if we're going to come to grips with the overall problem of illegal immigration, there has to be some way to find common ground. And this is a particular circumstance where the people are already in the system and that a mechanism for deporting them already exists. You already have the Obama administration bragging that they're doing a great job at this. And you have a Supreme Court order saying California has to release a bunch of prisoners. So if the country can't come together, yeah, I'm trying to be a uniter, not a divider, right? Like the president said he was going to be. If they can't come together on this particular one, then there's really no room for it. But I don't see, in the last week, maybe it's taking time, but the administration should be stepping up and saying, okay, here's something where people from various sides of the aisle can get together and say, this is a good thing to do.
The only thing, and I think everybody in here probably would agree, that the only thing that that Obama looks for, I can't call him the president, is opportunity. He looks for opportunity to try to make himself look good. He looked for opportunity to try to make himself ahead in the polls. The biggest problem, and I've been saying this for the last 2 years, at least in my blog, is that there is a difference between someone who knows how to manage versus somebody who knows how to govern. It's very easy to go out here and run a campaign and make yourself look good, but when it comes down to actually taking the oath and carrying out the oath, a foreign concept that Mr. Obama does have, it's a very different ballgame.
Oh, I completely agree. I mean, the presidency should not be on-the-job training. We've seen a lot of that. Again, you get back to the 2008 campaign and the dig at him that came not just from Republicans but from the Hillary Clinton campaign, that he was inexperienced, that he wouldn't know how to be president, that he had no executive experience, that he had very little Senate experience, and his community organizing just wasn't sufficient background for someone to be the chief executive of this country. And what's gone on since then has been a reflection of that, where it comes down to politics or making a splash or making a speech. He can do fine, but when it comes to the nuts and bolts of doing everything, to executing important policies that are in the interest of this country, he's really, just not doing that great a job. He can certainly write checks. We've seen that. The U.S. deficits are just astronomical. Yeah, I mean, you look at the stimulus program that created a bunch of temporary government jobs that didn't create anything else except a massive pile of debt, and was a great way to hand out money to his supporters and, people in his natural constituency, labor unions, for example. I mean, yeah, you can do that. Who can't do that? Heck, give me $1 trillion, I'll bet you I can create more jobs than he did pretty easily. So, yeah, if that's what you're doing, then fine. But when it comes down to really dealing with the tough calls, dealing with the hard issues, and just even the day-by-day stuff, he's just not so good at it. It's like he'd rather play golf or something, or I guess now he's a ping pong expert. I don't know. B, what do you think?
Well, I think we're down to our last few minutes. And I wanted to say thanks, Gerald. I appreciate your call as always. You have a great blog if you have a chance to go there and read it. Gerald, tell us the blog address again.
It's www.watchmanscorner.com.
Yeah, and Gerald was a guest. Thank you so much. Appreciate you calling in.
No problem, B.
As we're winding down, hey, I wanted to talk about a poll that we had on America's Conservative Voice, Facebook page, because Facebook lets you do this polling now, and we like to throw up little questions every now and then just to see. Some of them are not too serious, kind of humorous questions, and some of them are serious. And here's the one that we asked a couple days ago was, who is your choice for 2012? That is, of the Republican candidates, who would you like to see run? And it was very interesting. We got, there were some votes for Mitt Romney. There was slightly more for Ron Paul. A number of votes, I'd say about, 7 or 8% for Alan West, who's an amazing guy. I really like him.
I love him.
Sarah, you met him. Well, lucky you. I'd love to.
I said love him. I'd love to have him on your show, actually.
Well, okay, let's do that next week. In any case, he's fantastic. I really like him. Then Sarah Palin got more votes than him, but then the plurality vote getter on this thing, who got about a third of the votes, was Herman Cain. And that's really interesting. Herman Cain's really been coming on strong lately with a lot of conservatives, getting a lot of attention. Just a plain-speaking guy who has some really good policies. And I was very interested in the fact that he was the top vote getter in our poll. Other, also-rans include Kermit the Frog, Ted Nugent, who is seen frequently in the Washington Times. I'd vote for Uncle Ted in a minute.
Right.
And there were some other joke answers, but in any case, so very fascinating. I'd be very interested to see how the whole 2012 race starts to shake out, whether it'll be Mitt Romney or whoever it is. But I'll tell you something. I'm not really here to back a candidate. I'm just here to say whoever the candidate is, I'm going to vote for that candidate, because we cannot take 4 more years of Barack Obama. Thanks for joining us. See you next time.